Here we are.
We are.
The first podcast of 2024.
We're back.
We are.
With a smile.
We're back and recharged and ready to bring some amazing podcasts to our listeners'
I've got rid of
ears.
the cough that I had on the last podcast of 2023 and a cough that you had for...
I had the 100-day cough.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
It wasn't. But we're back. We're recharged. We're ready for another exciting year at ClassForKids.
We are. And straight into the year, we were taken down south to Nottingham last week, or sorry, the beginning of this week, for...
the Access Marketing Kicker of 2024.
Yeah, so we were down with a big number, about 350 of our colleagues in marketing, where we had sessions with laphologist Stephanie Davies.
We heard from Teti Soto.
Yep.
We also heard from a number of other speakers as well, talking all things marketing. If I said the marketing funnel, for any marketers out there amongst the kids activity providers, they'll be very excited to hear about that.
And if you don't know what the marketing funnel is, simply Google it. And if you're a business owner that doesn't know what the marketing funnel is, shame on you.
Or maybe we might bring some wonderful content explaining the marketing funnel and how it can apply for kids activity providers. Just watch this space.
Could be some of the wonderful content that we're going to bring to all of the listening ears and eyes in 2024.
And it has been a very exciting week, as Stephen said. We've been away in Nottingham at the Marketing Kicker. We've learned lots, we're recharged, but it wasn't without its usual ClassForKids drama.
And this time, it's not
No,
me. I don't control the weather yet.
No, but you're still the curse.
Okay, I'll take that, yeah.
So, long story short, our train on the way back. Train there is always fine.
Yep.
It's always fine. It's the way back. We were delayed by 5 minutes, missed our connecting train by 3 minutes, which made it turn into, rather than one change, 3 changes, some cold nights.
Was it 6-7 hours or something like that?
Something like that. But we've discovered some new talent amongst the team. So there's twofold this talent. The first one is... we can clear waiting rooms no matter what the weather.
Yep.
Because we are so annoying and so loud. So if you have a house party or something that you want cleared, just DM at ClassForKids UK and the marketing team will turn up.
We'll be there. We will chase them all out. We literally had 9 of us in little areas that we were all huddled in with, and it was like -6 outside.
Yeah.
And our noise and talking made these people just go,
They chose hypothermia over warmth because of us, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
Second talent, Stephen?
We are trained entertainers. Twice within the last 6 months, or the last 2 months, we've ended up entertaining train carriages full of people. This time round, we brought back the age-old game of charades.
Yeah, and I've discovered a new talent.
Yeah, she does have this really freakishly good talent for charades, where, somebody just went like this. Well, I know the listeners can't see it, but I'm making a T. A T, which means the.
And they did a triangle on their head, and I was like, the Princess Diaries.
And she got the Princess Diaries just like that, yeah.
More to the point, we had a great time there, but we've had an even better time today because we have a very exciting guest on the first podcast of 2024.
We do. We thought we wanted to start with a bang this year. Back in October last year, we attended the ICAP event, which is the Institute for Children's Activity Providers, and one of the really, really impressive keynote speakers there was a lovely lady called Libby Langley.
And we've had the pleasure of sitting down with Libby just today, actually. So you're getting everything in the one day. Libby Langley came and visited our office. We managed to sit down with her and get some really good insights into what she does and some plans for the future. And we also get the pleasure of having our team sit down at 4 o'clock this evening and sort of learning more about Libby's journey in business.
We do. And she's going to be involved with us in a number of things this year. We won't spoil it all now.
Can't say too much. Something's coming very soon.
There's always something coming very soon. But I think we should just get into this interview. It was a very good one. Both of us doing it.
It was.
Back in the studio like the good old days. Here we go. Libby Langley on In the Club.
So Libby, welcome to In the Club, the ClassForKids podcast. We have with us today the Queen of Easy Business. You're a podcaster, an author and a speaker. What is it that you don't do? So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Libby?
Well, thank you for having me. So I'm Libby Langley. Yeah, I'm a business coach. I've been in business since 2011, so I feel like a bit of a veteran now in the business world. And I help people, easy business is my thing. I help people to work less and earn more. So it's all about efficiency and profitability.
We actually had a session down with Access, our headquarters there in our marketing kicker this week, and we had Stephanie Davies from Laughology talking about happiness in the workplace. I don't know if you know Stephanie or if you've heard of Laughology, but it was talking about all of the different elements of you can only focus on what you can or can't control, and actually so it was a really good session. I don't know what you thought about it, Stephen, but it kind of ties into that.
I thought it was very good. This is the first I've spoken on this podcast now, and I feel a bit, oh. So you've came today from Chesterfield.
Yes.
So thank you very much for coming all the way up just to see us. No, it's been great. So the reason that we asked you to begin with was that one of our salespeople seen you speak at the ICAP conference back in
end of September.
And he was absolutely impressed. I mean, he came away saying that was the takeaway, was your speech and your talk at it. So tell us a little bit about that and how you kind of get involved in that.
Well, the reason I was at the ICAP conference is because one of the organisers I've known for a long time and knew her when she was her brother's business actually, but when they were starting their business was around the same time I was starting my business, and we met through a kind of entrepreneurial group that we were in, and we grew and developed together. They franchised their business, then sold their business, and she became a kind of consultant, and we just kept in touch, and she'd watched my journey and seen that I'd grown and developed too, and thought I'd be a good speaker. So, and I've always put lots of content out on Instagram and on social media, so it's quite easy to find examples of me talking and sharing stuff. So I've always been really, really open with sharing content and information. So yeah.
And I guess what inspired you to start your business and start coaching people? Was there something that happened in your own life? Did you see a gap in the market? What was that? You're smiling. I feel like there's a story here.
Well, I'm smiling because I feel like I should say yes. I was really passionate about this, and the honest truth is that I was utterly miserable in my job. It was absolutely burning me out. I worked in education and I loved that job. I was a commercial development manager, and I used to organise paid-for training for companies. And I started delivering some social media workshops. I got qualified as a tutor while I was there, and I really loved it. And it just became, unbearable to be a commercial person in a public sector, in a funded educational sector. And I just left. I mean, I look back now and I just think.
So did you just make that decision, I'm leaving? Did you have this business in mind, or did you just think, for my mental health and well-being, it's better that I just... It was
that. It reached a point that I just had enough, and I walked away, and I'd always done lots of networking, so I knew lots of people who had their own businesses, and I did a kind of series of lunches with people and said, right, do you think I can make money and make a business from training and coaching people? And they said, of course you can. And that was the full extent of my market research into starting a business. But the mortgage has always been paid, and here I still am. And yeah, it's been really successful. But I started it because I wanted to do something different. I couldn't keep living the way I was living. So yeah, it was about freedom and my own my autonomy. Yeah, for sure.
And like the power of network, like I think that's a hugely important thing. It's sometimes not what you know, it's who you know. Obviously there's an element of you need to know what you're doing if you want to start something, but it's that who can I rely on, who can I go to advice for, and who's that person that's maybe 3 or 4 years ahead of me in a similar journey. I don't know what you think, but I think networks are hugely important. Yeah,
it's something we're concentrating quite heavily on as well at the moment. So in terms of within our industry, within the kids activity industry, you work with a number of businesses in the industry. Without going into specifics and names, how have you found working with them, and what support do you give them, and how can you help them kind of improve their procedures in business?
Really, most businesses are the same. I work with service providers, so I don't work with kind of bricks and mortars and product-based businesses. That's not something that I really know too much about. Well, I mean, I know how to buy stuff, but not necessarily how the business is set up. But service providers, yeah. And the issues are pretty much the same across the board, is that people feel they're working too hard, they're tired, they're not earning enough money, and they can't see the wood for the trees. And that's honestly the same across the board. So I do work with quite a few children's activity providers. Some are franchisees, some are independent. And it's the common theme. Again, it's the same thing. It's like, I want to grow my business, but I'm running around and I don't know what to do next. And so I always look at how the business is structured. And this works if you're an independent or you're a franchisee, but how the business is structured, what you're charging for things, what you're focusing on, and whether you're being efficient with it. Because for children's activity providers, if you've got 20 classes and they've all got 5 people in them, you're never going to make any money. Whereas if you've got 5 classes and they've all got 20 people in them, suddenly the business becomes a much more viable proposition. And really it's helping people to understand these kind of fundamentals of business that make such a difference. And then once you've got that solid foundation, you can start to grow. But you can't grow without having all the nuts and bolts in place.
Absolutely, and I was reading some of the success stories on your website of clients that you've helped, and I think one of the biggest things that we know at Class4Kids, and certainly from our time here, is often when we're speaking to these people for the first time, they actually don't think of themselves as business owners, and I'm assuming from that you find the same. It's how do you go about trying to educate and change their mindset? Like, what are your top tips for those kinds of things?
The thing that I say the most, and all my clients will tell you that this is like every other sentence, it's about conscious decisions. And I mean, certainly when I started my business, 2011, I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I was financially savvy and understood business because I'd just done my MBA and I'd done lots of management qualifications and I worked in the commercial area. But that's very different to actually running the business and being in it yourself and all the emotions and everything that go with it. So it really just making sure that what you're doing is what you want to do, I think is just kind of so important, because we go into this, we go into running a business because we want to run a business, but we don't know what that means. And so thinking about actually how you want your day to look, how you want things to be structured, and making those conscious decisions. Is this going to help me get where I want to go? Where is it that I want to go? And am I just busy for the sake of busyness? Is this constructive? All those kind of things. You got to have a bit of a word with yourself, really, and because that's how a business owner is born. It's not by buying a franchise that a business owner is born. It's about this mindset and this understanding and those skills to a certain extent.
One of the biggest things, like for ClassForKids, is, as I say, is that they're not seeing themselves as business owners. For a lot of the clubs that we speak to in the first instance, it's, well, I've got this job in the daytime and I'm really passionate about this. I've always had it in my life and I'm really passionate. It's actually, why don't you think of yourself as a business owner? Because you're running classes, you're generating revenue, you're advertising. Now, whether those things are basic things or the way that they're doing it, there's definitely ways that they can level up and do these things. But it's trying to educate them to realise actually you're not just doing a hobby or a passion. Like, this is a viable business if you stick at it and you make it work, and if you have these things.
They're doing everything that a bigger business is doing on just a much smaller scale, and they just don't even realise it. And it sometimes takes a kind of mirror to be held up to look. You're actually doing this. You're doing it all yourself, kind of, and then you kind of step in. And in the kind of franchise realm, where do you fill, as you say, that kind of that gap with businesses?
Well, there is a huge gap, and franchises are superb. I think they're a great way for people to be able to start out on their business journey and grow on their business journey. But perhaps you're already providing children's classes, you already do that independently, but you want to do something different, or you've been a teacher, you've been a teacher at somebody else's dance school, say, and you think, do you know what, the way for me to do my business, I'll buy a franchise, because I've already got the teaching skills and all of that. I'll buy the franchise and that'll help me build the business, and then I can be really independent and all of this. And it's like, yeah, that's A, that's C, and B is where I come in, because buying the franchise doesn't automatically make you a brilliant business owner, because franchisors will give tons of support and encouragement and guidance, not all of them, but the good ones will, but that doesn't necessarily involve the practical business skills. And so there's no reason why you can go from being a superb teacher of ballet classes for children to being a brilliant business owner just by handing over several £1,000s for a franchise. There's a whole skill gap here, and they're the kind of people that I work with who recognise that they can be better at this, and actually it will just help them to be able to enjoy what they're doing more, because they won't be stressing about the fact that it's like it's like walking around with a blindfold on sometimes, and I help them see more clearly and be more strategic and think differently.
So is it just franchisees that you work with, or do you work with franchisors? Because obviously the requirement for those two people or two businesses are very different. The franchisor, and I'm talking from a ClassForKids perspective here, would be very much around, how is my franchise network performing? Where do I need to give more support? Because I can see maybe there's a dip in class capacity here, revenue here, and that's more about, like you say, the support that they provide. So franchise A is doing really well, franchise B's capacity is down, here's where I can provide support and training. Whereas a franchisee is more about the day-to-day, like they're the business owner essentially that's running this thing day in, day out. So do you see a difference in the support that you provide the franchisor versus the franchisee?
Yes and no, because it's largely, it's kind of the same skills, because franchisors often will have started as the practitioner the same and grown. I mean, I have a client who I work with who's just superb at the minute, but she was delivering her classes herself, started to grow the business, franchise the business. And I'm working with her kind of on two sides, really, in that I'm helping her to make the central business, the franchise orbit, more robust. So helping her with her own business skills as well. And then to be able to support the franchisees so that they can grow too. So I'm not working directly with any of her franchisees, but I am supporting the entire organisation.
Yeah, you're impacting it kind of at a micro level.
So it benefits everybody. You know, the more benefits the franchisor, because if a franchisee is upskilled and up-leveled and, you know, turned into a brilliant business owner, then they will make more money. They will be happier. They will stay longer. They will generate more for the franchisor, and so the franchisor will be happier, have more longevity. So it benefits everybody. But largely, a lot of the skills are and conversations, they're the same across the board. They're just kind of tweaked slightly, I would say. And when working with a franchisee, if it's me working directly independently with them, then that's fine. But if I work through the franchisor as a kind of approved business coach for them, then obviously whatever support I give will be in accordance with whatever the restrictions are and terms and conditions are of the franchise.
So happiness. Yeah. Happiness in business. One of the things you're quite a big advocate is that, and also kind of work smarter, work less. Mm-hmm. That's music to everybody's ears, I think. But is that when you're working with businesses, how do they take that on board, and how is it that you put that across to them? Because people will think that they have to be 24/7, and how do you approach that?
Okay, the hustle culture is very rife on Instagram and all of that, isn't it? TikTok, you know, you got it. If you're going to be successful, you got to smash it. You got to get up at 5 o'clock and do an ice bath and, you know, drink some kale juice and all of this. And it's just like, no, you haven't. I mean, it might make some people happy, but it would make me really utterly miserable having to do that. And I think just allowing people to run their business in whatever weird and wonderful way suits their, you know, their circadian rhythms, their kind of natural get up time and go to sleep time, and the way they work as you know, chaotic within a very structured
organised chaos.
There is a term for it.
I mean, if you kind of if you're neurodivergent, then your brain is all over the shop, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't have systems like ClassForKids, right? You can't have systems that support that, and you can let your brain just do its thinking then, which is fine. But the question that I always ask my clients, and when I'm on stage talking, is just like, what makes you happy? This thing that you're doing right now, are you happy? That thing you're going to do next, does it make you happy? And it's not to say, does filing your receipts make you happy? You know, I mean, not necessarily to that granular detail, but do you actually like what you're doing? You know, if you've got a team, do you like having a team? Because I had a team and it wasn't making me happy, so I made them all redundant in my business journey. Just saying, am I happy? Am I happy? Am I happy? About everything you're doing will help you adjust it so that you are. And it might be that you think, do you know what? I think I'd be happier if I had a job. Great. Then that becomes a conscious decision, and that's the important thing.
So actually let it lead it. Let that let the happiness that you are or are not experiencing lead your decisions. Yeah.
It's like me being here, you know, it's like absolutely love this and I'm just absolutely delighted to be here, you know. But at the moment there's so much at the moment there is kind of so much going on, so many opportunities and so many really interesting and exciting things happening that I'm absolutely knackered, right? I am really tired. However, I'm aware of that, and I'm also aware that coming up here and doing all these things, it's all conscious decisions because I know why and I enjoy it, and it's a period of growth, therefore there is more hustle, right? There is more push. And then, you know, in a few weeks' time, it'll level off, and that's how you just have to be so conscious of everything and understand why and how it's falling into place and whether it's helping or not. There's a book, and because of ADHD, I can't remember his name. Ben Hunt Davies, I think, that Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? Okay. He was on the rowing team that a few years ago in the Olympics that won a gazillion gold medals. Right. And his book is really interesting, and the ethos is really interesting, that every single thing they did when training for the Olympics for this rowing stuff, I don't know the terminology for rowing, was, will it make the boat go faster? Yeah. Is eating this going to make the boat go faster? Is staying up later going to make the boat go faster? Is going to bed earlier going to make the boat go faster? Is wearing those clothes going to, whatever. Every single thing. And whilst that's the extreme, because obviously the Olympic athletes, there's a lesson that we can all learn from that. And it's like, if I want to grow my business to the next financial level, or you want to franchise it, is what you're doing going to make the boat go faster? Is what you're doing going to make you get there and make you happy? Yeah. And if not, don't do it. Go and sit and watch the telly instead.
I like what you said about hustle kind of culture, because it is, isn't it? It's like, you have to be, it's do this, do that. Yeah. But applying that, does it make you happy to all these? If you're going, I'm going to get into an ice bath tomorrow, is that going to make me happy? No.
Don't do it then.
Yeah, I'm going to be eating kale. I'm going to be running 10 miles a day to be a successful businessman and entrepreneur. And it's like, you don't need any of that at all. You just need...
if it makes you happy, do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's not to say.
There's no way a lot of these things though make a lot of people that happy.
For sure. I don't think they do. But it is this kind of Instagram and TikTok pressure of, this is what you have to do. You've got to get to 10k months, and it's like nobody ever talks about what a 10k month means or is. Yeah. And it's like, is that your turnover? And if so, how much did you spend on Facebook ads to get you there?
Yeah,
how big's your team?
Is that, yep.
Oh yeah, so you made £1,000 profit. Okay, you could get that from working like 2 days a week in a supermarket or whatever, for example. Yeah. And it's like, look at the difference in your quality of life and your time.
Yeah, I see them from a kind of creative angle. I've watched ones going, well, what you need to do to get big high revenues on TikTok is just repurposing other people's videos, putting a voiceover over them, and you look at these actual video, the output, and you're like, the whole thing looks a mess, and this is what you're doing each day. You're like, this must drive you crazy. But yeah, I like hustle culture. I like that term.
He'll be using that now. He'll be using that next week.
We'll put a trademark on for you.
But I'm anti-hustle culture.
Yeah. I think we absolutely would be as well. It's
I think so. Yep. I think your whole system is about making life easier, right? Yep. I mean, it's about efficiency. It's about
almost like
reliability. It's about everything that hustle culture kind of is.
Yeah. We could have a little logo made anti-hustle, like a stamp.
Yeah. Any content that we would do in the future together, we can do anti-hustle culture.
I like it. I like the fact that we get a stamp. We could have T-shirts as well.
There we go. We've come up with a new brand. There we go. That's great. Yeah.
A lot. Okay.
Yeah, everybody's seeing live a new business, new business being developed.
NDAs need signed after this, Brian.
Yeah, Brian's in the room as well, so he's involved in this now.
Top secret.
And I guess, Libby, you've been running the business for a number of years, and this kind of flips the previous question, maybe somewhat on its head, but what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced since running that business, and how have you overcome them?
I mean, there's been a lot. It's 13 years this year, so there've been a lot. Right. So, well, I mean, personally, I guess I got divorced. I brought my ex out of the house. That was a huge challenge, as well as trying to run a business. At the time there was a team of 5 of us, and I employed them all. So they weren't freelancers. So that was a really challenging time, just to kind of keep focused on stuff, because when there is any kind of personal trauma going on, then it is quite hard. And when you're responsible for all that stuff as well. Yeah, I mean, they were not... It's a long time ago now, but they were not fun years, I have to say. It's kind of a period of 3 years that just wasn't any fun. So that's in terms of personal challenges. But business challenges, I mean, the hardest thing for me, and it remains the hardest thing, is not going down every single rabbit hole and following every single shiny object idea that, like the T-shirts, right? It's like, I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm like, oh my God, let's do that. Buy the domain, have the idea. And
that's how your brain works, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Honestly, yeah, very, very similar. I mean, when we spoke at first, it's there's a lot, I mean...
The tangents we could go off on.
Pom bombs, it's a good example. My wife is very good at knitting hats, and she can do it really, really quickly. Pom hats, yeah. She can do it like an hour, and we were sitting one night, and I was like, this is it. This is how we're making our millions. We bought the domain name to this.
Of course you did.
We came up with Pom Bomb, a logo, and yeah, we were doing that. That was the whole. Yeah. That was that whole Friday night, and we woke up on Saturday morning like, what are we doing?
I'm just seeing Brian laughing behind the computer.
But that is absolutely, and I feel I've really cracked it now, right? And I talk, I've talked about this in my podcast quite a bit. And what I do now is I have the idea. Because the idea is brilliant, right? The idea is always the one that's going to make $1 million. The idea is always brilliant. I have the idea, I flesh out the idea, and then I just leave it for 48 hours. And
that is very clever. I like it.
Yeah, because then, and that's hard, that was the just making that decision that, do you know what, I'm not going to immediately plan out this entire program, launch it and everything, because I've launched this. I think there's 2 or 3 things that I've had the idea for set up, launched, and then unlaunched, which is a bit embarrassing, but always gives a story, which I can then share as experience. It's all about coaching people. But yeah, to let your mind still does what it wants to do, because that's great. And if you've got ADHD, I'm autistic ADHD, my mind's all on 30 different topics at the same time. So allow yourself to do that, allow that thought process to happen, but just don't do anything. And what people will find, I'm sure, which is what I find, which is what you said, you either think, well, that was ridiculous, or I've had the idea, I can't be bothered, or, or just, nah. And it is, and the steam's gone because you've had the dopamine hit of having the idea.
Yeah.
So if you just let yourself think about it, or maybe write some stuff down or whatever, but then don't do anything.
Just a kind of a pause moment on it, okay.
And I guess that's kind of like the biggest challenge that I kind of am overcoming. I mean, there've been a million things of like,
But that's a really important learning. Like, you've learned how to refine it. And I think it's that message of time is really important. It's like with anything, if you feel a certain way, if somebody's made you feel a certain way, or you've got this idea, you give it time and say, right, okay, do I still feel as strongly about this an hour later or a day later? And that kind of thing is the idea still relevant 48 hours later? And actually maybe that 48 hours gives you time to say no, or maybe it gives you an idea of, right, okay, here's how we can refine it and really make it something. So I think that lesson of time is actually very important to anything in life.
Certainly that 24 hours made me and my wife go, yeah, I think we did too many wines last night. It's not going to be £1 million empire.
Oh, God. Is this like a few weeks ago? My husband and I, we went for a drink on a Friday night, and Saturday we found ourselves in Manchester looking at flats. It's like, what are we doing? But booked some good holidays that way as well too, right?
Oh, that is very much me, isn't it? Like, we'll end up going, me and my family going the craziest places, and I'll just be like, oh, I've booked that. And Marie's like, what about the fine about the money, but look at the place we're going. Like, crazy places. We stayed in buses, helicopters. Really random.
So there are some good sides, but
there are no words.
You can't run a business on impulsivity, unfortunately.
No, because otherwise we would be rich.
It would be so exciting, but you just can't. Yeah.
I know his ideas of grandeur would be rich. Yeah, I think the universe is maybe telling us we're just too.
Yeah, the universe does this to me. A little bit of time.
Settle down, son.
Okay, Libby, what is next on the horizon for you? What does the next maybe 2 to 3 years look like?
So I'm changing the way that I'm working because of the happiness thing and because of the way my brain is. And I have stopped taking on any new one-to-one clients, which was a massive decision to kind of make over Christmas 2023. I've still got one-to-one clients who I absolutely adore working with and will continue to work with, but I'm not taking on any more. And instead, I'm running in-person mastermind days at my house in Chesterfield. Yeah, so I don't have to... It's all about ease, right? I don't have to go anywhere.
You get them to come to you.
Yeah, they
you
come
get
to
multiple
me.
people coming at the same time.
Get some food, great. And we talk about people's businesses, because taking that time out of your business, that day out of your business, is the best thing that you can possibly do.
But also, like, on that point, if you're having multiple people, and I'm assuming these people might be from across different industries, there's so much to learn right there.
For sure.
Like, so much to learn from people that are operating in a completely different industry to you.
Getting people in a room together is really, really powerful.
We work with somebody called Louise, who's always getting a shout out on this podcast, from a company called Dissect. She also has the Dance Business Lounge. She does very similar kind of days where she has a big network that is part of her business, but she'll bring them all together from time to time, and it seems that they get massive benefit from those.
Oh, it's great. And I mean, I've always been to things. I've invested in my own personal development, £120,000 or something since I started the business, my own personal development, and they've always been the best for me. There's kind of short, sharp bursts, then you can go and do it, and you can come to another one, but you're more in control of things. So I'm doing those. I do VIP days for people where it's just me and them. Working with franchisors is a big area of growth for me this year, being a business coach in residence, so working with the franchisor to support their franchisees. And then whatever other interesting stuff comes along, which I like to just keep that little bit of...
A little bit of an edge. Whatever impulse comes to mind.
A little bit of mystery.
It's 25% of impulsivity that I allow myself.
Yeah, you can
I like
leave
that.
for kind of, and I'm working on other stuff.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, because you know that your brain's going to have you working on other
Interesting
stuff.
projects.
So if any of our listeners wanted to find out more about these mastermind days or VIP sort of coaching, where would they be able to go and find that information?
They can find me on any social media platform. I'm Libby Langley, so at Libby Langley on Instagram, Libby maybe _Langley on TikTok, I can't remember.
We will pop all of those in, of course, the podcast
LinkedIn,
description.
Instagram and LinkedIn are my major ones.
She's on all the social channels,
Yeah,
basically.
I'm on them all, you'll
so-
find me. But Libby Langley on everything. My book's on Amazon.
Let's hold your book up thoroughly. Get it nice and steady in front of that. What camera, Brian?
That one there.
Right.
This one.
Hold it still so we
sorry.
can get a nice punch-in shot.
There
There
it
you go.
is.
Look, there you go.
On Amazon, Kindle and in paperback. My podcast is also called Life in Business. That's on all the podcast apps. My website is libbylangley.com.
Perfect. Well, there we go. You've heard all the places that you can find Libby and find access to all of wonderful resources and hear more from her.
I don't know about you, but I mean, I know we start each year off saying that was amazing, but that was a really cracking podcast with lots of good information packed
First
in there.
podcast of our 3rd year now. 3 years in podcasting.
We're going to have a birthday celebration this year.
Yeah.
Not individually, of course, we'll have those, but I mean a podcast party.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end of the year. Do you not meant to do that big milestones like 5s and 10s and things?
Well, I don't know how you can celebrate a 3rd birthday. Anyway, we're totally digressing from what Livy was saying in our podcast. I think there was a couple of things I took away. This whole anti-hustle work culture.
Yes.
I think what Libby was saying is we see so much of it online on social media, particularly around sort of TikTok and Instagram, around this pressure to be high performing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to drive and self-motivate, but what it's bad for is things like making you feel like you're missing out on something because you didn't get up at 6 o'clock and go for that run, when actually the way that you are built as a person, the way that you learn things, the way that you structure your day could just be very different from somebody else.
Yeah, a lot of that is kind of, it's very detrimental if you can't do these things like, oh yeah, get up, get into your ice bath. Can't do that, I'm not going to ice bath. Or eat your cake. Things that, I mean, the happiness is what I took away from it. That was a real kind of driving point in it, and I think if we could all adopt that, I mean, I'm guilty of not doing it at times, but we totally should be. Just if you're doing something that's not making you happy, don't do it.
Well, I was thinking, when I was listening to her, I was so captivated and motivated by it, but I'm now like, oh my goodness, I'm going to cut everything and everyone out of my life.
All right, is that what you're doing now, yeah?
Yeah, Brian, Stephen, gone.
Okay, cool.
See yes. Do you know Marie Kondo?
Is there a punchline to that?
No, it was a Netflix documentary.
Oh, no,
and she was all about decluttering and living a minimalist lifestyle.
Yes, okay, yeah.
And what she was saying is you look at something and say, does it spark joy in your life? And if it doesn't, you get rid of it.
Okay.
So that kind of reminded me of that analogy. And I'm not saying you look at things and objectively, does that spark joy in my life? But actually, is this making a difference? Do I still feel motivated? Do I still feel inspired every day when I get up to do this thing? And I think, when you apply that to business, it's, not necessarily saying that you're not going to be that business owner anymore, but is the direction of what you're doing, is that making you happy? Like, are those goals that you want to achieve still the things that you want to achieve? So I think it's just that self-reflection. It doesn't necessarily need to be a daily thing, but certainly like for businesses on a quarterly basis, that kind of thing is, am I assessing myself regularly enough to make sure that this is the direction I want to travel in?
What she said, absolutely. What she said, she was great to talk to. Lots more to come in the future with her, and she's got her book that she pimped.
She pimped
That's
out.
great. She's got her website. She's got her podcast as well.
She's got a podcast, author, speaker, and obviously she's talked about her training courses as well that she does. She's moved away from that one-to-one client. And I think client basis, and I think what that shows is, you don't have to stay stagnant in business. What you have now isn't necessarily what you're going to have in 3 years. So I think for our listeners out there, it is just, whatever trajectory you're on at the moment, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same trajectory in 3 years' time. And I think it's just that continual motivation. If you apply the happiness analogy to business, then you could be in a totally different place in 3 years' time. So I think that's kind of what I took away from it, that actually keep moving the goalposts, keep shifting them, like keep focusing, keep bettering yourself. And a lot of that, we know for clubs, comes down to delegating. Delegate to your team that you've got around you. You step back and you think about, where's my business going to be, and think about that growth from that point of view.
She's just got better and better at this, haven't you, over the years? Year 3, and that's what we're getting back. I'm sitting here like, all I can say is that's what she said again, and I'll wind us towards the end of this
It's
podcast.
the coffee. It's the afternoon coffee.
It is. She's had a lot of coffee today, and poor Libby has put up with us both like fever pitch. So I think we'll say goodbye in a normal way for the first time.
I think we should.
Of 2024.
Yeah, you count us in.
1, 2, 3.
Bye.
Bye.